but also with real-life problems that the West faces as it goes into the 21st century. And this is, I remember this when I was growing up, the 21st century, the little show that was on, and all these forecasts for the future. Well, now we're almost in the 21st century, and those forecasts aren't so rosy anymore. If anything we've learned in the 20th century is that progress isn't absolute, it's not certain, and progress comes at a certain price. And one of your last questions for this part of the course are, what are the problems that Western man faces today, and how can these problems be solved? And remember that, how can they be solved, too? That's an important part of the question. And in that, you might want to identify things like the arms race, the continuing arms race, not just nuclear arms, but conventional arms. You want to mention, of course, the environmental problems that are there in the Western world today, on all kinds of different planes and all kinds of different scopes. You would want to mention, of course, the continuing prejudice and inequality existing in the West, inequality based on race, color, religion, or sex. Age, problems of education, morality, whatever. One of the crucial problems you should be able to identify is an increasing inequality in the distribution of wealth. And if you learn anything from this part of the course, or actually from the whole course, one of the things that always is certain to bring about social tension, civil war, revolution, it's unequal distribution of the wealth. When it gets to the point where people feel that they have no existing stake, no stake in the existing order, that they're not getting any benefits, that they're not getting ahead, that's when violence breaks out, that's when revolution breaks out. And one of the problems is in the late 20th century world, the ability to equalize the distribution of wealth is very much there. The problem is putting that into practice, as it is with all these other problems and everything. Today, of course, there's a problem of both the Third World and Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union and everything. So where does that leave us here as we finish up this course? First of all, there's no such thing as the Western world anymore. It's one world. It's a world in which cultural influences come from all over and are exchanged between all sorts of different people. It's not limited to just the West anymore. What is the Western world? What is Western culture? What is Western culture? Is it U2? Is it, I don't know, is it Pavarotti? Is it Walt Disney? Is it Jean-Luc Picard on the bridge of the Starship? Is it opera? Is it NBA basketball? Is there a difference between the avant-garde culture and the culture for the rest of us little peoples along the way? Two things in response to this. First of all, much art is very much beyond our comprehensions, but then is it really art? In a way, art has gone very avant-garde, new wave, but in also a way, art is still very much a prisoner of the past. If we think of art and culture, what do we think of? We think of sculptures, we think of paintings, we think of museums, we think of operas, we think of symphonies, we think of concerts and everything. All very much something that came out of the 19th century, all very much part of our past history and everything. The other thing I want to remind you is that when you read the paper today, when you watch these talk shows on TV, if you think about it, a lot of the arguments, a lot of the issues being discussed are simply replays of the exact same issues that were discussed in ancient Athens. The conflict, one of the basic conflicts that exists in the West, the conflict between me as an individual and everybody around me as a state, me and the state, me and society and everything, was very much discussed in ancient Athens. The problems of sexes, the problems of equality were all very much part of discussions in ancient Athens. Not only discussion, but the same problems were back there in ancient Athens. The unequal wealth, the problem of inequality and everything, the problem of political participation. They had the same problems. In a way, when you look candidly at Western history, the same problems have existed throughout this 5,000-year period of time. The scope may have changed a little bit. The nuances of the discussions and issues may have changed a little bit. But at basic, we're still talking about the same things that we were talking about 5,000 years ago, which calls into mind the whole theory of the West, the whole theory of history, in a way. With regard to the 20th century, the most distressing point about the 20th century is really what I call the over-specialization of the 20th century intellectual life, the compartmentalization, the fragmentation of intellectual life. For example, I'm a historian, but there's no such thing as being a historian anymore. There's probably, I would estimate, 150 subfields of history in which I should be a specialist or I shouldn't be a specialist. I could be an urban historian of 19th century America. I can be a rural historian of 20th century France. I can be a historian of the city of blah, 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 and somewhere and everything. History, all the intellectual fields, sociology, psychology, everything is very specialized. Science is very specialized. Everything is fragmented. There's no intercourse between all these different intellectual concerns. And what that means is it means it's impossible for John Smith sitting at home watching TV at night to figure out what's going on because nobody's talking to each other. Nobody's presenting him with a comprehensive view of the world of what's going on. You see all these little answers from all these little sub-disciplines. And it makes it very hard for you to figure out how you should orient your life and what the real issues are in the world, this kind of over-specialization. And you can see, you go into Sears and you go to buy something and you're not buying it from a sales clerk, you're buying it from I don't know what they call them, a technological sales manager or something, they don't even call them sales clerk and everything, but very much a symbol of this over-specialization. Usually we're supposed to end this course, old Russian tradition, old Chinese tradition, that you end the course with some remarks about what the future is, which is what you guys are going to be doing in your essay and everything. And that's one of the things you can do with history, is you study the history, and you can say, wow, what's going to happen in the future? What are we going to be doing in the future? If anything, I like to say about the history, history leaves us with a very nasty view of man and man's alleged accomplishments. Because, like Peter the great Russian Tsar at the beginning of the 18th century, Peter the Great built St. Petersburg on the bones of his subjects. Literally, thousands and thousands and thousands of people died for him to build that city. And in a way, that's what modern-day West is like. Millions and millions and millions of people have died along the way so we can get to this place we're at today. And because of all those deaths involved and all the violence involved, it makes you very pessimistic about the future of man. One thing that is certain is that things have changed for the better in certain ways, and there is progress. Finally we learned after a couple hundred years that, slavery is no good and slavery has to be abolished. And it took us a little while longer to learn that, well, there should be equality of the races, there should be equality of the sexes, there should be equality of religion. So in a way, we have a little bit of progress there. And, let's remember the little bit of progress in an optimistic note as you guys write your final essay.